I had written off Doom for most of my life. I thought the game was too old and too labyrinthian to be enjoyable. This misconception was entirely to my own detriment. I had played older shooters from that era as a child, namely Duke Nukem 3D, and wasn't able to truly appreciate them, having been raised on games like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. I remember getting lost, running out of ammo, and dying repeatedly. So I assumed the same of Doom. It wasn't until the summer of 2016 that I truly gave the game a shot. I was immediately surprised at how wrong I was. Doom is a fantastic game, even now in 2020. Don't let the game's simple graphics or seemingly old level design scare you away. What we would consider a fast-paced shooter pales in comparison to the practically cocaine-fueled tear that Doom sets you on. Very few games live up to the intensity and speed you'll find from shooters of this era. Watching someone play them doesn't do them justice either. It's something that you have to experience for yourself. To play Doom well, you must keep track of a lot of information, and the non-linear level design requires you to actively remember the level's layout, something modern games have almost completely abandoned for essentially decorated hallways. Doom throws you into the middle of large, winding maps that require layered exploration to complete, almost always involving locating colored keys to open locked portions of the map. Doom rarely tells you where to go or holds your hand, which is a blessing and a curse. Getting lost in the maze of unholy corridors is almost guaranteed to happen at least once. Your only tool for navigation being the trail of corpses you leave in your wake, not unlike the ball of string given by Ariadne. Navigating the complex levels can sometimes be the most difficult challenge that the game presents the player. Doom's combat isn't particularly demanding, but it's certainly not easy either. It sits in that comfortable zone where, provided you're paying attention and meeting the game halfway, you won't have too much trouble outside of an occasional spike. Most of the difficulty comes from being worn down over time, testing your ability to maintain momentum. It's rare to outright drop dead unless you get overwhelmed. The Doom guy can survive most attacks if at full health. Generally, you'll take small amounts of damage over a level, miss a few too many shots, and find yourself fighting an uphill battle in the next map. Thankfully, you'll almost never find it entirely impossible to recover. You'll just have to play smart to survive, making good use of all your weapons and looking for hidden health, ammo, and armor caches to replenish yourself. Shooters from this era stand in contrast to the much more scripted and linear experiences we're used to. The idea of a developer giving the player a weapon before the intended progression is an alien concept. Imagine playing Half-Life 2 and finding the RPG in a rundown City 17 apartment. It sounds ridiculous. Games from this era would routinely hide weapons 4 or 5 levels before you would find them normally. Sometimes it seems like the developers designed levels with secrets in mind, making certain portions of them more difficult knowing that they had hidden a plasma gun in another room, laughing to themselves as they added more cacodemons. Secrets rewarded curious or at least in-the-know players that went looking for them and gave devilish developers something to offset their mischievous level design. Even small things like power-ups are entirely gone from games outside of throwback titles. As previously mentioned, Doom's complicated levels involve keys and switches to progress. There is very, very little scripting in the game. Mostly you'll trigger hidden walls that release an ambush when you pick up a key, or occasionally when you cross an invisible threshold. Coming from modern games, it's refreshing to see a shooter that isn't so choreographed. There's a purity to its simplicity. A former friend once said to me, "Brevity is the soul of wit," and I have a feeling he stole that quote from someone else considering it's attributed to Shakespeare. But I won't deny there's some truth there. Perhaps one could say the soul of elegance is simplicity, if only because simplicity is the core of elegance. It might seem stupid to call Doom elegant, however I think it's a great word for it. Doom is elegantly designed, it does a lot with very little. There's only 10 enemy types in the whole game, 2 of them being bosses and 1 is a palette swap. Despite the lack of quantity, they never get boring. They all feel like they were designed to work in concert with one another, covering for their various inadequacies. Every encounter mixes them together to challenge the player's ability to pick priority targets and to execute quick decision-making. Deciding whether to kill all the fragile hit-scan enemies before the horde of tougher melee demons surrounds you or to take out the Baron first can be the difference between life or death. It feels like the developers at id Software were intimately aware of the strengths and weaknesses of the Doom guy and the forces of hell. My father's always said to me, it's the simple recipes that are the hardest to execute. If you mess up, there's nothing to hide it. Doom is simple, it's clean, and it was absolutely cutting edge at the time. It's like a razor blade. Doom holds up against modern competition, and perhaps it shines even more now in contrast to them. Doom shows that if the core of the game is fun, it doesn't matter how old it is. There's nothing quite like it. Doom's single most detracting factor is its non-linear nature, the blessing and the curse that I mentioned previously. If you can intuit the proper path through a level on your first try, you'll probably enjoy that level a great deal even on repeated playthroughs. However, If you get lost and spend a large amount of time backtracking, searching for what you've missed, you'll probably never quite enjoy that level as much as the others. Once you learn the layout better, you can appreciate that level more, but the stain remains. While it's not necessarily a common occurrence, there were multiple times where I got lost for upwards of 10 minutes at a time. At least once per episode. Computer Station, Containment Area, and Limbo immediately spring to mind. The inscrutable maze-like quality appears more frequently in the last third of the game. And while it's certainly thematically appropriate to get lost in hell, I'm sure as you can imagine it's not a particularly fun experience. Luckily, that experience is in the minority, even if it's a slight bitter aftertaste to an otherwise sweet treat. It's rare to outright drop dead unless you get overwhelmed. The Doom guy can survive most attacks if with full health.